Thanks. I like to share the screen. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to share my screen. Just a minute.
Yeah, please. Yeah, sure.
So at first, I'd like to say something by myself. Yeah, I'm a PhD at Massey University. My name is Song Mei. Yeah, I nearly finished my PhD study. I will submit maybe end of this month or next month. So I'm quite busy this period. I still work a lot on my papers as well as my thesis especially. So can you see my, slides, PPT slide here?
Yes.
Okay, good.
You can see, yeah.
Yeah, I will start. My topic is about ethnic minority language. It's related to the communication. It's a kind of tool of communication. They just involve me in this group. So I'm so happy to share with you about my ideas about the language, not directly to the communication. So the first, I start from two questions. The first question, how many languages are there in the world? And then second, how many languages will disappear by the end of this century? Okay, I will answer this question by myself. There are about 6,000 documented languages, excluding dialects. By the end of this century, more than 50% will become extinct, and up to 90% will be endangered by the end of this century. So it's a very serious problem. And here, my topic is just a part of my study. It's a paper. The name of the paper is Contradictions and Tensions Between Place-Making, Place Belongingness, and Naxi People, one of ethnic minority people from China, located as a southwest of China. It's not Nazi, it's Naxi people, a very kind, nice people. Okay. And my study aimed to explore the volatility of ethnic minority language from its cultural context, the relationship between the changes of cultural context and what people feel about the changes, and then the influence to the language. So here, continue. My paper, my article includes 7 parts. The first, introduction, research context, research aims and research questions, theoretical framework, research methodology, findings and discussions, and then the last one, conclusion and reflections. So I will start from the first section, introduction. I mainly talk about distribution causes and the consequences of language endangerment. Language endangerment, the situation of language endangerment in China. And then the third, research objectives and research questions. So the first one, about distribution of language endangerment. Among over 6,000 languages, just like we mentioned just now, most of the world's population, more than 100 million people, speak only 8 languages, while most languages, about 5,000 languages, were spoken by only 2 million people. And the distribution of language endangerment. So endangered languages widespread across the world, but concentrate in Central and South Africa, Central America, Southwest Asia, West Pacific countries, and Australia. And then causes of language endangerment. There are 3 important perspectives, ideas about language endangerment. The first one is historical perspective. It pays attention to the influence and effect of wars and invasions to the language speaking countries. And then second is social linguistic perspective. These ideas pay much attention to the effect of changes in the society, such as development of economy and technology. And the last perspective is a kind of ideological language perspectives. it pays attention to the internalized struggle and complicated attitudes, feelings, and values of the language speakers. Consequences of language endangerment. It leads to loss of associated identity, culture, and communities. It also leads to reduction in linguistic and cultural diversity, and also loss of cultural environments and practices. So the language situation in China, language endangerment in China. Of the total 129 languages in China, there are about 90% of them are endangered and 2 have already died out. The Naxi language in the southwest of China is one of the languages facing such kind of language endangerment. Research objectives and research questions. The overall focus of my study is the endangerment of Naxi language in Lijiang Ancient Town. It's a town, a place in China, and the original place for this language. And complexity and intersections between language endangerment, vitality, and survival with practices and experiences of place making and place belongingness. And that is making of the place, as well as what people feel about such kind of making of the place. The research questions are, how do the Naxi people understand, experience, and feel about the place making undertaken by the Chinese central government and local government in producing such a kind of tourist destination of Lijiang Ancient Town, the old town? What's the relationship between the place belongingness of the Naxi people in relation to the LAT, that is the old town, Lijiang Ancient Town, after it was listed as a UNESCO heritage site? This is the second research question. There are 2 research questions in my study here. And the research context. I like to introduce my study from the context. The first one is Lijiang Ancient Town, the town, Naxi people, Naxi culture, and Naxi language. The second, policies on ethnic minority languages and minority languages in minorities and minority languages in China. And the third, UNESCO heritage status and changes of LAT after it was listed as a World Heritage Site. So the first one, Lijiang Ancient Town, LAT. It is located in Yunnan province, southwest of China. The total area of the town is about 3.8 kilometers. It was listed as a World Cultural Heritage Site in 1997. 3 important factors contributed to its prosperity of this place. The first is location. It's located between the 3 important provinces in China. The first is Tibet, another is Sichuan province, the third is Yunnan province. It's also connected with the southwest countries in Southwest Asia, in the south of Asia, as India and so on. And the second factor is climate. It's not so cold in winter and not so hot in summer. It's very comfortable in this place. It's located in the mountains. So, and the third factors contributed to this place is the Naxi culture. Okay. So the Naxi people, from the picture, you can see that Naxi people have different costumes, clothes, and different food, as well as music and so on, quite different from the mainland China. Before 1996, over 30,000 Naxi people lived in this town. In 2009, the number declined to less than 5,000. In 2013, only 2,000 left. Okay. And then the Naxi culture, you can see it from the buildings, their costumes, their landscapes, the streetscapes, and so on, as well as the dances, music. Okay, continue. Naxi language. It's a kind of Tibeto-Burman language. And the written form named as Dongba scripts is a kind of pictographic scripts. It was listed as a memory of the world. It reflects the early writing and civilization in the mountain area in south of China, in southwest of China. Okay, the politics on ethnic minorities and minority languages in China. There are a lot of changes the minority languages and the minorities have to face are that how to maintain and retain the minority culture and languages in the fast development of economy and society. This is the most important challenge the related policies have to face. Second, contradictions and tensions exist between policy expectations and policy practices. It's always there. And then UNESCO heritage status and changes of LAT, the town. LAT, the old town, was inscribed as a World Cultural Heritage Site by UNESCO for its traditional culture, ancient street landscapes, and so on in 1997. After that, a lot of changes happened caused by the tourism. It's mainly about commercialization of the Naxi culture, environmental pressures, and migration, local people moving out of the town, and the other Chinese people moving in. Okay, theoretical framework of my study in the context of Naxi Asian town. The first is 3 important ideas underlying my study. The first is linguistic anthropology. The second, placemaking. The last, place belongingness. So the first important idea, linguistic anthropology, it was raised by Doherty in 1997. It's a kind of study about language and speech from cultural resources and practices. It lays a foundation for thinking about language vitality, visibility, use, and the survival from a cultural perspective. Application of this important idea in my study, I try to explore the potential connection and the relationship between language use and speakers' interactions in space and culture. The second important idea underlying my study is placemaking. Is the idea, I use the idea as an analytical lens for space, for thinking about space, culture, and language. 3 important principles are presented by Montgomery in 1998 for making sense of a successful place. The first, activities happening in the place. Second, images of the place. And the third, the forms of the place, such as city, town, as well as rural area, and so on. And the second, as an integral part of placemaking, culture in a place has synthesized the people's cultural products, practices, and perspectives. So this culture is one of the important part of placemaking. And here, the third idea underlying my study is place belongingness. Here it includes 3 important aspects. The first one is related personal life history. The second, relation to other people in the society. The last, culture-centered language. In my study is Naxi language. So place belongingness is a framework for the feeling connection between people, language, culture, and place. So my research methodology, 4 parts involved here. The first, rationale for the research approach, and the research methods, data collection, the third, data coding and analysis. The last one is methodological limitations. So the first one, I frame my study, my research from epistemological constructivism. I just try to construct different ideas, not only from literature, but also from Nazi people, non-Nazi people, their ideas to construct my study. A case study approach, and then field site selection. A case study approach. A case study of Nazi language vitality in Lijiang Asian town. I use a simple unstructured observation of the street life in the town. You can see from the picture here. I just roam around to see what happened in the streets. And then second, I use a semi-structured interviews with 35 participants, includes 5 groups of participants in and from the town. And then the last research methods is a qualitative textual analysis on related official regulations and laws, measures. Okay, field site selection. 3 important places I used for my interview for different groups of people, different groups of participants. The first one, business people in their shops along the 2 central streets. One is Sifang Square Street. Another is Dongda Street in the Lijiang Asian town. The second interview place is I interview Nazi family and university students on WeChat online. And the third, I interview travelers at the corner of public places as streets, squares, and so on, along the 2 chosen streets. Okay. And the research methods and data collection, I'm sorry. Personal notes, I made some notes from the simple unstructured observation of the street life during my field work to get a sense of activities and atmosphere of this old town. And then in-depth interviews, transcripts from 5 groups of participants. There are 35 individuals. And the last data from a body of tests is about policies, regulations from UNESCO, Chinese central government, and the local governments to enable textual analysis. Data coding and analysis. I established the coding categories, place making about activities happening in the town, images, forms of the town, and culture, about cultural products, cultural practices, and cultural perspectives. And also place belongingness, about personal life history, personal experience in the town, relations with other people in the town, and also a Nazi language. Methodological limitations, they are limited access to appropriate participants and legal documents. Yes, as I'm not a Nazi. And then the second, a lot of data I have to translate from Chinese language into English language about the observations, interviews, and legal documents. All these things I got from written in Chinese or given in Chinese. Findings and discussions, I will discuss my findings in the following parts. Yes. And then the first findings. Images and forms of the LAT, the town. I found that garments supported the constructions of the town with regulations and funds, invested a lot of money. And as the second point, another aspect, the current LAT, not only the streets, but also houses and infrastructure is more beautiful and more modern than it was. Tourism in the town has increased significantly in the last 2 decades. The second aspect, incomes from house rental is the most important invitation for the Nasi people to rent their houses out. The third, many original residents, particularly the Nasi people, moved out of the town. And then another aspect, rubbish is increasing, water resources is reducing, and the fish in the river is declining. Okay, activities happening in the LAT, in the town. Laws and regulations regulating the activities happening in the town generally, performed what happened about the activities happening in the town. There are a lot of laws and regulations stipulate such kind of normals and so on, such kind of norms. And then the second aspect, non-Nasi dancers wearing Nasi costume do the traditional da tiao. It's a kind of traditional dance to attract travelers to join in. And then about the activities happening in the town. Many Nasi are not entreated in the traditional dances, modified with popular songs, popular music, but many non-Nasi and travelers are happy with such kind of activities. Another aspect about activities, many people in the town have misunderstanding of the activities in the Nasi traditional holidays. Okay, and then the third aspect about Nasi cultural products and practices. Most modifications being sold in the shops has nothing to do with the Nasi culture. From the picture, you can see the first picture is a kind of Bell Cafe. Cafe has no relationship with Chinese culture. And here, the second is a Honggu. It's a kind of modern Chinese brand of handbags. It's a kind of modern handbags. It has nothing to do with Nasi culture. Also, the building seems like it's a Nasi building. And then Nasi culture and practice, cultural practice and practices. Selected intergenerational transmission of Nasi cultural products and practices occur over generations. Young generation prefer such kind of things, very modern activities and so on. Traditional, their grandparents and so on, they also engage in the traditional active cultural products and practices in the town. Nasi cultural perspectives, old generations were always admonished repeatedly not to destroy the nature, as we see such as the water system in the town. All the person would be punished by their ancestors and heaven. But some of the young generation have changed and diverged from the traditional perspectives. For the travelers and non-business people newly moved in the town, they know nothing about the Nasi cultural perspectives. So this is why there are a lot of rubbish appeared in the water after it became a very famous tourist destination in China. Okay, so the second important section in my finding is about place belongingness. I will say something from personal history, relations with other people in the town, and the relations via the Naxi language. The first. So personal life history. The first aspect is Naxi participants. The second aspect is non-Naxi participants, about business people and travelers. And Naxi participants, most of them were born, grew up, and received their primary education in the town. Now they moved out, rented their houses out, and their original houses were no longer there as their home. They didn't regard their original houses as their home just because they didn't live there. They felt attached to the town, they told me, but they seldom went back home in the LAT. Non-Naxi participants, business people and travelers, they are migrants of the town. But they occupy the town. They become the residents, the now residents, and the owners of the town. But most of them didn't regard the town as their home. Just because they think they rented the house from the Naxi. They would eventually return to their original home, that out of Lijiang Ancient Town, maybe out of Yunnan province, from the other provinces, from the other places of mainland China. Okay, relations with other people, Naxi participants. They just think they didn't think they had connection with the current people in the town after they rented their house out. That's because a lot of investors, they rebuilt their house. They rent their house out. So non-Naxi participants, they had a little contact with the Naxi. They rent the shops from the subtenants. Most of them rent their shops from the non-Naxi subtenants. Okay, different cultural values become an important barrier between non-Naxi business people and Naxi landlords. Relations via the language. Naxi participants just think their language was a bond for the Naxi people to be attached to the LAT, but the degree of attachment was varied in different generations. The old generation, the generation of the grandparents, used it as a communicative tool in their daily lives. But while the generation of the grandchildren employs it as a symbol, as a channel to make friends out of this city, out of this town. The generations of grandchildren attributed their poor Naxi language speaking to the influence of outside culture and neglect of their mother language learning in their family. And they celebrate a lot of different festivals, as we say, Christmas and so on, instead of their traditional festival. And for non-Naxi participants, they stay in the LAT for some years. Some of them for many years, more than 10 years, from the starting of the place was developed into a tourist destination, but they can't speak the Naxi language. Almost all of the people in the LAT just speak Mandarin Chinese, just because the travelers here speak Mandarin Chinese and the businessmen here speak Mandarin Chinese. The Naxi moved out. Okay, this discrepancies between language policies and practices, this positioned the minority language out of the mainstream institutions. And from 1950s, Mandarin Chinese was regulated as important language in the higher education. So this is about policy. And the conclusions. The first conclusion I got from my findings, the Nasi people are facing challenges in placement belongingness due to out-migration and absence of Nasi in the town. The second, Nasi people's personal experiences with LAT and their cultural resources were interrupted. Their relationship with travelers and new migrants, business people, and so on to the town were hindered, and the position of their language as a key determinant of place of belongingness was fractured. The third, the relationship between the Nasi and other people appears to be more of a distant economic exchange through the property rental than through cultural sharing and learning. The fourth, LAT has experienced economic and infrastructure development and demographic changes after becoming a World Cultural Heritage Site, and through various regulations and efforts made by the local governments and the central government to establish it as a tourist hot spot and a conservation area. And conclusions, the fifth. Also, the integrity and the authenticity of traditional activities, images, and forms of the LAT have been remained in the LAT in the town. And to some degree, the pursuit of economic benefits has led to excessive commercialization, overloaded tourism, and deterioration of environment. The sixth, with the in-migration of business people and travelers, the Nasi people have become marginalized and largely invisible in the town. Okay, the last conclusion. The Nasi people, their personal experiences, they're not only the Nasi people, but also the business people who lived in the LAT. Their personal experiences and life have been interrupted, social networks weakened, and the Nasi language usage fractured across different generations. Okay, this is my presentation. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Song-Mei. This is a very interesting research project, research topic, integrating language, communication, as well as culture. So we will keep the questions at the end of the presentations of this session. So just want to check if the first presenter, Yu Ling, is here. All right. So yeah, I guess the presenter is not here yet. So I'll proceed with my topic today, right? So thank you. And then we will keep the questions at the end of the session.
Thank you.
So
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. All right, so let's move on to my topic. Okay, so this is my topic today. Right, I care about you, the role of cyber coping for family caregivers of mental disorder. All right, so just a quick introduction of my team, right? I have my co-researcher, Dr. Chang, is here as well. And then I also have other two co-researchers from University of Oklahoma, Professor Kim, and also Professor Jong from South Korea. And UPM, we have two presenters, two researchers. All right, so this is really, and we personally find that mental health problems have become, right, based on our research, mental health problems have become a public health challenge worldwide, right? And we see this is the leading cause of disease and disability in the world, let alone the current pandemic, right? When many of us are stranded and also locked, right, in our own residential to curb the spread of the pandemic. Now, mental health problems would not kill those who are suffering, but it is a silent killer, right? Which will prevent one from being full self. So the World Health Organization defines mental health as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So we can see that if an individual suffers mental illnesses, his emotion, cognitive capability, and behavior are disturbed, and resulting in an inability to cope with life's ordinarily demands and also routines. So the only treatment that mostly recommended by the physicians is providing these patients with help, support, and love. So to do this, family caregivers of mental health disorders oftentimes play an important role. And usually these family caregivers can be family members, obviously, right? Friends, if they're single, neighbors, or even other individuals. And we also see that this family is worth noting that these family caregivers, they neither have any formal training in medical and nursing, nor psychologically ready and prepared for taking care of the family member who has suffered from mental illnesses. So they take care of their family members who have physical and mental disability or disorder for this reason and the only reason, because of LOVE, love. Now, unfortunately, caring these mentally disorders patients or family can be very challenging to family caregivers. And many times, these caregivers can suffer severe depression and also under stress. Now, in Malaysia, based on this Malaysian National Health and Morbidity Survey in 2019, it's found that the greater severity of depression in patients, the greater depression symptoms that occur in caregivers. And if you see here, 16% of these family caregivers say that their health, be it physical and or mental, were affected. So the key message here is that the health and well-being of these family caregivers should not be overlooked, right? So it is important for health communicators like us to examine the effects of caring in health caregivers and also what can influence, right, their outcomes later. Now, because of the limitation of current medical treatments and also clear treatment options, and also because of informal medical training, medical care that these caregivers received, caregivers cope with these difficulties by using variety of communication channels and by consulting with medical team online. So they use online to communicate with people who have similar problems, similar symptoms, right? To learn more about from them. And they engage this communication through information acquisition or even information transmission or both, right, online. But the effect of this communicative behavior has been considered in relatively few studies and still at the infant stage. And very little limelight or attention has been given to understanding the coping strategies and perspectives of family caregivers of patients with mental health problems. And based on a systematic review on mental health related research, it's found that out of 642 articles from 1989 to 2010, only 7 articles published on mental health problems. And there's one researcher, there's one project paper, Kim and Nee in 2010 proposed that more studies should be conducted on health problem solving in the era of digitalization. And that's come in the concept of cyber coping. So before I move on to the cyber coping model, so please allow me to take you, right, to this simple tour of communicative action in problem solving. Now, this is a second order Latin variable in situational theory of problem solving. In short, STOPS. So is a theory developed by Kim and also Groening to study how individuals, they use different communicative action in problem solving, right? So as you can see here, there are 6 dimensions associating to communicative action in problem solving. And these 6 dimensions are compartmentalized into 3 categories: information selection, information transmission, information acquisition. So our focus for this cyber coping is on information transmission and information acquisition. Not so much on information selection because it is much towards passive communicative action. Now, let's look at information acquisition, particularly information seeking. Now, this is a clear-cut communicative action whereby people, individuals that seek information from various sources to reduce their uncertainty, to gain intellectual knowledge and also resources in decision making and problem solving. Whereas information transmission, particularly information forwarding, we see this information transmission refers to the dissemination of information to others. And this is through active information forwarding, which is a planned, self-propelled information giving to others, right? So this information giving is in the sense that talking about one's problem with others who share similar problems with you. And it is a cost-effective way to solve problem by activating information traffic that makes a larger body of people perceive a problem as similarly problematic, right? So that they share their feelings, they share their experiences, right, through different platforms in order to get support from others who have similar problems with this information giver, right? And to find some support which will eventually help these information givers in decision making and problem solving, right? So this is the concept of CAPS. So in line with this information transmission and information acquisition in problem solving, And also based on previous literature, then this concept emerged, cybercoping model. Now, cybercoping is an issue solving effort in cyberspace, right? Which this individual health problem solvers, they use cyberspace to communicate with people whom they have identified, right, or found to be similar problem solvers. So in the context of mental health disorders, which we see is a socially stigmatized illness, so many patients or suffering persons hide their difficulties due to stigma, and they find few social resources to support them. So combining two different theoretical frameworks, situational problem solving, particularly communication action, information seeking, information forwarding. And then we have this coping theory from Lazarus, information focused coping process, problem focused coping process, and also two different types of coping outcome. So in general, coping process has been explained as a person's ongoing efforts. So in their thought and action to manage specific demands, appraised as taxing or overwhelming. So we see that they use different types of coping process, emotion, and also problem-focused coping. To first, for emotion, they refer to social and psychological support to enhance relational ties, while problem-focused improved information exchange, right? And then they through these two different processes and coupled with communicative action will help them in achieving coping outcome. So this is the idea of coping, cyber coping model. So this research was conducted in December 2020 until March 2021, the data collection. So we hired enumerators to collect sample face-to-face in these two hospitals at psychiatric clinic, Hospital Kuala Lumpur and Hospital Putrajaya, to collect samples from family caregivers of mental health disorders. So you can see the samples we collected from Hospital Kuala Lumpur and also Hospital Putrajaya. So these two hospitals are public hospital, right? And we also got ethical approval from the Ministry of Health and also from the institution, right? From university. And also it's good to note that because of different phases of movement control orders, or i.e. lockdowns, right? Some could be full lockdowns, partial lockdown. So we face a lot of difficulties in collecting the data, but thank God we finally, right, got the data and sufficient for us to analyze the data and explain the role of cyber coping in the context of mental health problem. Okay, so the inclusion criteria for us to collect this data, of course, there must be main caregivers. They are from either the nuclear family, extended family, or single parent family. They must live in, they must be at least 18 years old. They must also use at least one kind of media platform, right? In the daily to get information. So based on this distribution of the demographic profile, we can see most of our respondents are females and they are Malay, and the age is the mean is 40 years old, right? So this is just a very quick explanation of the demographic profile. And we also see the use of online, right? The media to seek information. So we can see most of them, majority, they use search engines to seek for or to look up for information. and followed by social media and also website. So we can see the exponential growth of use of social media search engines among these family caregivers to get health related information, right? So we also see the mental disorders, 40%, about 40% of their family members suffered depression, followed by anxiety and also mood disorder, all right? All right, so this is the model, and then we use a structural equation model. This is a structural equation modeling. We use AMOS to analyze the associations of the variables and also to test the mediation effect. And you can see the model fits, right, with different model fit indices. So based on this model, we observed that family caregivers of people with mental illness did not seek knowledge, right, to receive emotional support, but rather to gain intellectual assistance, right? So you can see there's no relationship from information seeking to emotion focused coping, which is more on emotional support, but they seek information online to get information on how to get treatments options for their family. Seeking information on alternative treatment options that others have tried and on valuable resources and assist caregivers in saving money, encourage individual effectuating, right, with greater knowledge and decision-making improvement. Now, when compared to information seeking, family caregivers put out more effort in information forwarding. You can see the beta value, 0.68 and also 0.48, right? And also the significance is also less than 0.001. So they put more effort in information forwarding. They created a more emotion-focused coping strategy, which enhances their collective effectuating by fostering better relationship with other caregivers, right? So such development aids family caregivers in developing effective competence and the manageability of caring for loved ones suffering from mental illness. And we also see that the problem-focused coping process improved the perceived effective coping outcomes more than emotion-focused coping process, okay? And the both emotion and problem-focused coping have influence on physical coping outcomes. They find after searching, seeking help or emotion support from online, the physical health of their family member who suffered from mental illness improved. And also you can see also improve their emotion, right? So what we can summarize from our research here is that family caregivers of people with mental health disorder utilize and benefit from online support communities. Communication behaviors, both information seeking, information forwarding, positively affect caregivers' subsequent behaviors, right? Such as coping processes and also their outcomes. And we also see full mediation effects of emotion focus, because you just now you saw that there is no direct relationship from information seeking, information forwarding to effective and also physical coping outcome, right? And problem-focused coping process asserted a positive mediation effect on the relationship between information seeking and effective coping outcomes. And we also see online support community have provided substantial emotional support to family caregivers of mental disorder. So our suggestions here is theoretically, we see that further study may be conducted by focusing on the role of cyber coping in relation to other health-related concerns, because most of the research have been conducted in dementia, right, or chronic diseases. So our focus is concentrated on mental health. Now, practically, the healthcare community and policymakers can promote emotion transmission, right, which is information forwarding, more than just offering copious online health information to fulfill information seeking requirements. It's beneficial to develop information technologies and applications that allow online communication settings, so which family caregivers of mental health disorder, they can communicate their own experiences and also health-related knowledge with other caregivers. And structured programs that specialize in caring for people with mental health disorders should also be introduced so that they can help these caregivers to manage the health-related issues, right, more effectively, and the person with mental health disorders, right? So with that said, thank you very much for your listening. So we will now go for our Q&A session. So now is Q&A is just good, nice. We have 50 minutes for us to have this Q&A session. So any questions from the ground to our presenters, to myself, and also to Song Mei. I can also see that Yu Ling is not here. So today, this session, we only have two papers, yeah, two paper presentations. So any questions?
So Mei, your topic is in fact fascinating, but in your opinion, do you think the endangered languages is unique to China, or is it happening all over the world?
Yeah, it should happen all over the world. Yeah, just because as I found from the literature, there are about 6,000 languages in the world in this century, but by the end of this century, 50% will be disappear, and 90% will be endangered. So this is a global issue, not just in China. And yeah, I think the typical place in the world, the first one should be Australia. Yeah, just because of the colonialism, and another that should be the Central American area, Central American area, I see, and another area that should be African, a lot of African countries. Yeah, it's a global issue, not only in China. So. Now, a lot of persons just think about this issue, please.
Now, clearly, even though you did not highlight the term or the concept cultural imperialism, do you feel that cultural imperialism from the West and maybe perhaps from mainstream China seems to be the cause of the deterioration of the languages that are in China?
From what kind of aspect do you think this issue? I'm sorry, just
cultural imperialism.
To repeat your question.
It's a concept that we do study in international communication and also intercultural communication about how Western culture can impact livelihood of people in certain part of the world. And clearly from your presentation, we have seen that, right? Through travel, people assimilating what the travelers want. So therefore, they make changes to cater to the travelers. That's one part of cultural imperialism from the West. But what about from mainstream China? Because China is a huge country, right? So do you see cultural imperialism from mainstream?
Yeah, that's a problem.
The different provinces in China.
Yeah. The paper here I just present is a part of my study. My whole study includes another part that is LL. It's called linguistic landscapes. From that part, we can see that there the influence of language, of English language in this town. But from this paper, it's just a part of the study.
Okay.
I mainly think about, the Chinese, the Mandarin Chinese, the influence of Mandarin Chinese to the ethnic minority language. Okay, some part. They from the linguistic landscape. I mean, the signage in this town. You can see that there are a lot of English, instead of Naxi language, and also the Mandarin. Mandarin should be the primary language here. And the second one is English. And the third one should be the Naxi language. So this part is missing here. I need to speak, show more about the whole situation of the language. Just a part. Sorry.
Now, knowing what you found, what do you think would be a good way to help prolong the language of the Naxi people? I mean, clearly you have found what you found.
Thank you.
What would be your recommendation so that we can preserve the language, not let it lost?
We can't preserve the language, The language endangerment and language disappearing is a global issue. We just, try to help the local people, the ethnic minority people, just retain their culture and language as long as it can be retained. So to let the culture, the disappearance of the culture, a lot of culture will disappear. And this is why a lot of people feel very sad. And we can't read the, lot of books in the history just because we don't know the language. Language is a kind of tool. We just try to help the local people, the ethnic minority people, to recall what happened in the history, and so on, such kind of things. Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. So I also concur with Wai Chia's question in terms of the recommendation, but this is really a fascinating research, Song Mei. So I just would like to know from your interview, any interesting findings you found which could possibly be researched in the future?
Yes. I'm sorry. This part I just forget to say something about this part. I just say something about linguistic anthropology. A lot of academic scholars just think about this issue from the ethno-linguistic, is ethno-linguistics. Ethno-linguistics is a kind of, stay with the people for a long time, live with the people, observe what happened about the language. So this should be the very good view for the future scholar to think about the language disappearing. And also, as I'm not a Naxi, in the future, a lot of academics just think the people, they are themselves should think about the language. This is another important view for the maintenance of the language. And also, from my finding, I found I use part of the textual analysis about the policies, regulations, but a lot of policy, the regulation I can't find. So maybe this is another aspect for the future study about the language policy, not only in China, but also in the other countries. There are always, it's a kind of gap or contradictions between between policy expectations and between the regulations and the policy practices.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
so
thank
maybe
you.
in the future, future researchers can use a triangulation approach to triangulate different sorts of
Yeah.
data, right, and information, and to find out
Yeah.
how you know any actions or programs that the Chinese government, right, can develop, establish to preserve the language and also culture of Nasi, right? So thank you for the response.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
any
yeah.
questions?
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Any questions from our participants? All right.
Yeah.
So if you do not have
yeah.
any questions, yeah.
Jan, I just say something about your research.
Yeah.
My area is not related to psychology, but I'm very interested in this area, in this subject. Yeah, I'm interested in the mental health. I just think your point is very good. You just think about, the family caregivers, their mental problems. That's a new view, new point. Yeah, I'm very enjoying your research about support the family caregivers. They are very hard. The person who with the mental disease, they just don't know what happened to him or to their families. It's a kind of disaster to the family, to the family caregiver. Yeah, your research is very good. Yeah, you support, caregivers. Not only is a pandemic period, we can't do it to face to support the family. You do the online support is very important for the family. Very good. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
very
you.
good
Thank
point.
you for this positive note from Sung Mei. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
So it's 8 minutes past 10 morning Malaysia time. So we will have another panel session, paper sessions coming up at 10:30, right? And then after that, then we will have closing remarks. So thank you once again for your participation, right? Joining this paper session, right? From the state, right? From Malaysia, from New Zealand, and also we have from China as well. My students are here as well. So thank you very much. I'll see you later at the closing remarks. Yeah, thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.